Welcome back to One Piece Explained. It's One Piece Day, and the official trailer for the live-action One Piece series from Netflix and Tomorrow Studios has just dropped. There is so much to talk about in this trailer, as they gave us more than we could have ever imagined, and with a lot of little blink and you'll miss it details throughout. As promised, we're going to break down this trailer in full, but a quick spoiler warning and disclaimer. I do make these live-action breakdowns with the intent of making them engaging and interesting for both longtime fans and any potential new fans of the series. As such, I'll be staying away from any of the big reveals of the series that I think are better experienced at one's own pace, but I will be discussing the characters and concepts that we see in the trailer, as well as any of the story structure and beats and details that I think are relevant for a proper analysis of this material. With all that said, let's get into the breakdown.
Well, fame, power. I found everything this world has to offer. Free yourselves. Take to the seas. My treasure is yours to find.
So what do you say? Are you with me? Mutiny.
We start out this trailer with a recreation of the first few panels of the manga, the execution of Gold Roger. And yes, to the fans that are caught up on the manga and anime, I said Gold Roger. Let's leave it at that. Gold Roger, portrayed here by Michael Dorman, and his pirate crew, the Roger Pirates, were the first people in the world of One Piece to circumnavigate the globe and find the treasure that would become known as the One Piece. At the end of his life, he was apprehended by the Marines and executed, kicking off the pirate era as we know it with his famous final last words. This prologue of sorts will likely be adapted similarly in this live action as the opening of the series, and we'll learn more about him soon enough. He walks up the stairs to the execution platform, where we get this really cool shot of his crew's Jolly Roger on the back of his jacket, a skull and crossbones with an exaggerated curly mustache, similar to his own. Fans will notice that the guards look different from how they do in the anime and manga, with their uniforms no longer being beige and instead coming in navy blue, perhaps to tie the color schemes closer to that of the Marines. Now the crowd itself is very interesting. We see a ton of Marines and potentially world government agents standing firm, but here we have someone in a green cloak. This could be Dragon. Now Dragon is a fairly significant character in the series as far as his role goes, and I don't want to spoil anything to that degree, but I can say, while he wasn't present in the initial depiction of Roger's execution in the manga, he was shown to be present in Chapter 0 when the scene of Roger's execution was expounded upon. And if you don't know, Chapter 0 was a supplementary canonical chapter that details the world leading up to Roger's execution. It was released as part of the promotion for the One Piece movie Strong World, and there were a bunch of other characters present here for Roger's execution as well, and I hope we get some more nods to them in the series when it drops. The civilians are cheering on the execution of the greatest criminal to have ever lived, but what's interesting to me are the ones who are not cheering. It's a very quick shot, but we pan over the crowd and there's two people that caught my eye. This bald bearded man with glasses up front, and this man in the hat in the back. The man in the front could be a nod to Crocus, the crew's doctor, though I'm prepared to be totally off base here, and I have no clue who the man in the back could be, and so perhaps this is just nothing, but it looks like he's sort of shaking his head no. I guess we'll find out relatively soon. We cut to the Going Merry sailing and get this shot from the teaser trailer in front of the Baratier, which, by the way, if you haven't watched my breakdown of the teaser trailer yet, you should definitely check it out. There's a lot of cool stuff in there. We get this scene of Zoro looking solemnly into the camera in front of his swords. Notice the table is held up from the ceiling by chains. This is a nice attention to detail, as a regular table will slide everywhere with the movement of a ship, whereas a table hung from its corners can be a little more resilient to the waves. Really cool adaptation for live action here with the logic and physics of a world at sea. The outfit he wears here could be from Chapter 111's color spread with his blue collared shirt. We get the shot of Nami navigating aboard the Going Merry, and she is sporting the outfit from the color spread featured in Chapter 28. Zoro and Luffy have also been shown wearing their outfits from this color spread, as we mentioned in the teaser trailer breakdown, so we're 3 for 3 here. She's holding what looks to be a compass or some sort of astrolabe, I'm not exactly sure what, but it's most likely not a log post, the device needed to navigate the Grand Line, as they're likely still in the East Blue at this point. If she is on the Merry here, then this is likely after the Syrup Village episode, as we see her in the same outfit in the next shot with the crew in this garden courtyard. This is likely Kai's mansion in Syrup Village. We can see the hedges and short shrubs as well as the pond with a stylized fountain in the shape of a seahorse, or maybe it's another shrub as well. Notice Luffy is wearing the shirt we saw in the teaser trailer when Merry was being built, suggesting that they do in fact get the Going Merry at Syrup Village. This shirt is from the cover of Volume 11, as we mentioned it in the last breakdown, but notice Zoro is also rocking a shirt very similar to the one from this cover. The biggest difference here, though, seems to be that these 3 intersecting lines stop midway down the shirt, whereas in the volume cover they continue all the way down. Usopp turns around, seemingly annoyed. This is perhaps where a certain you-know-who insults his you-know-what. We cut back to the execution platform and see Garp, portrayed by Vincent Regan. He's in a suit and tie with a standard issue marine jacket draped across his shoulders, much like in the manga. There are a few liberties taken with this outfit though, such as the chain attached to the insides of the jacket, allowing it to drape over him without concern. In the manga, characters just wear these things like their cloaks without any concern for physics, but of course in live action, it would be really difficult to move around while keeping it on your shoulders. But there's also a distinct lack of a collar on this jacket, which makes me think they actually may have a cloak or a cape of sorts here with some slight shoulder padding. We'll have to see for sure. You'll also notice that the marine insignia on his pins and what looks to be a dog tag, really nice touch there for the whole soldier aesthetic. There is a slight departure from the source material as the marine symbol seems to be atop a shield in the live action. Now as far as we know, Garp wasn't on the execution platform with Roger, who you can see there over his shoulder with his mustache in all its glory, but I suppose this does make sense as Roger and Garp were longtime rivals. He looks below and we get more footage of people in the crowd who are no longer cheering but are in a frenzy pushing and shoving the Marines. This scene is really odd to me because the civilians wouldn't be acting against the Marines for trying to execute Roger. Part of me feels this may actually be later in the series when the crew eventually reaches Logtown and the Marines are trying to control that crowd. If you notice, we have the same shot of the path leading to the execution platform here as in the beginning, but the Marines standing on either side are different between these shots. Of course, people could have gotten shuffled around and this may be nothing, but I've been wondering who this woman running through the center could be. They look to have a cutlass and a star-shaped badge or patch on their clothes. My first thought was something like, could this be Tashigi, especially since there seems to be a character here with some very similar hair to Smoker, but this would be a really odd adaptation of Tashigi's character. So let me know if you have any thoughts on who this could be. The sequence ends with Roger laughing. Personally, I think they nailed the feel of a live-action Roger here. It's not overtly goofy or childish, but it carries this sense of being menacing or unsettling in the right ways. He knows something that we don't, and he's being sly about it, which is exactly what needs to be conveyed in this scene. We fade to black and cut to Luffy asking a seagull to join his crew. This is a news coup, a gull that sells and distributes newspapers and wanted posters across the seas. This looks to be a scene unique to the live action, as this interaction doesn't actually happen in the manga, and in fact these birds don't even show up until way later after the events of the Arlong Park arc, whereas this appears to be soon after Luffy starts his journey, as we can tell by his dinghy and the barrel, alongside the makeshift sail behind him. One thing of note, animals in the world of One Piece are often depicted as being capable of understanding humans to some degree, or at least their very intent. This works fine in the medium of a comic or animation, but it may not be carried over for the live action. And when the news coup flies away, Luffy claims this to be mutiny. I don't hate this live action rendition of Luffy. He has a very different sense of humor and awareness than he does in the source material, but I feel it works for this live action series, and it doesn't stray too far away from his core characteristics.
Why would anyone want to be a pirate? This is the best thing there is. Wind in your back. Salty sea air. Loyal crew by your side. It's ready!
What is it?
We're Jolly Roger. We are the Straw Hat Crew.
In the teaser trailer breakdown, I pointed out the barrel Luffy used to save himself from a whirlpool, and we see that same barrel floating in the ocean here, drifting between a fight between the Alvida pirates and some poor souls. The cannonball they shoot here is pink and even has a red heart on it, matching the crew's Jolly Roger. And there's even some more attention to detail with this adaptation of this Alvida pirate who wears a Viking's cap, straight out of the source material. Someone asks why anyone would want to be a pirate, and judging from the setting here, I think this is Kobe, as this seems to take place at night after Luffy's clash with Alvida that we saw in the teaser trailer. Luffy explains all his favorite parts of being a pirate as we get a montage of several scenes. Alvida's crew is raiding this enemy pirate ship as we get this sick shot of Alvida herself swinging across and knocking back the enemy captain with her mace. Its design has been altered from the source material, where in the manga it's a bit thicker like a traditional Oni's mace, whereas in the live action it resembles more of a Morning Star. Noticeably, this changes how she wields and uses the weapon, as she's seen swinging it around more than she is hitting someone upright with it. We get the shot of Luffy climbing the bowsprit of the boat he likely acquired after defeating Alvida as he looks towards something in excitement. We then cut to a giant red flare bursting above that same boat in a later scene as the crew walks out of the cabin to inspect it. This seems to be another scene unique to the live action, but it does remind me a lot of when a red flare exploded above the Straw Hats ship after they opened up what they thought was an offering to the sea god, but it turned out to be a trap, alerting an enemy to their location. It's hard to say what's actually going on here, because if the three crew members are walking out of the cabin, then they likely didn't open anything to trigger it. We'll just have to see. What is interesting though is this chest marked with the world government symbol. Judging by when this seems to take place, I'm guessing this is a chest that they took from the marine base in Shellstown. Cut to what is likely the next morning as Luffy attempts to create the crew's Jolly Roger. This is taken straight out of the manga, although the scene took place soon after the Syrup Village arc after they acquired the Going Merry, whereas here it seems to be taking place on their way to Syrup Village on their initial boat. Nami isn't too keen on it, as we see her reading a map of the East Blue, and while it's difficult to be sure, this map seems very similar to the old map of the East Blue that has floated around the internet for years. Note that Nami's also seen wearing glasses here while reading the map. We've seen her use glasses on a few occasions, and Luffy seems to have been a bit reckless here with his painting, as you can see some splashes of paint across his face.
We're heading up to the Grand Line.
A treacherous stretch of ocean with bigger islands, bigger pirates.
And that's where we're gonna find the One Piece.
You've been making enemies everywhere we go.
Chop, chop! Cannon! Hit the deck!
Going Merry seems to be sailing away from the Baratie here, though it's lacking the Jolly Roger on its sail. There's a lone figure at the front, making me wonder, and without spoiling too much, if this is the scene where Nami takes the Going Merry on a solo joyride. Perhaps that's also part of why the Jolly Roger isn't on the sail in the shot. It cuts to this shot of the Straw Hats in their iconic East Blue outfits departing from some island, and given the configuration of Straw Hats here, I'm thinking this is after they leave Arlong Park in the Konomi Islands, as we see the tangerine trees behind them in the back. Usopp seems to be missing in the shot. Perhaps he's above in the crow's nest or at the helm. This could also be before they recreate the iconic scene from Chapter 100 that we saw in the previous trailer, given their outfit. We then get an expounded version of the scene from the teaser trailer where Nami explains the world of One Piece, and this time we get it depicted. The world of One Piece is split into 4 quadrants: the North Blue, the South Blue, the East Blue, and the West Blue. The first part of our protagonist's journey takes place in the East Blue. Dividing these 4 oceans are the Grand Line and the Red Line. The Grand Line is a stretch of sea that is where the One Piece is said to be, but it also is where the toughest pirates reside. Meanwhile, the Red Line is a long continental strip that separates the various oceans. There's a bit more involved with the geography of the One Piece world, but this is as much as you'll need to know for the purposes of the show and the first part of the series. Then, we cut to this large ship caught in a nasty storm. This is the Cooking George, a pirate ship commanded by a pirate named Red Leg Zeph, who we'll see later on in this trailer briefly. You can also make out the orbit right next to it, a cruise ship with a giant wine bottle for its masthead. I love that they went out of their way to show us the ship in all of its glory. They didn't have to do this, but they did, and it just really shows that they care. The Straw Hats find themselves in a circus setting before a fire breather. This is likely the setting in which they'll encounter Buggy the Clown. Perhaps the Buggy Pirates base of operations in Orangetown is being adapted to be a literal big top circus tent. Now, some may think that this man breathing fire here is Kabaji, the Buggy Pirates' second mate, but we actually get a quick glimpse of him later on in this trailer. Back on the Baratie, we get this hand gripping a large blade with a jeweled hilt across from who seems to be Zoro. This is Dracule Mihawk, a great pirate swordsman who winds up crossing paths with the Straw Hats on their journey throughout the East Blue. We'll talk more about him in a bit. Cut to the scene of Merry, a butler who works at a mansion in Syrup Village, and in the manga, he's the original designer of the Going Merry. It appears that Merry is played by Greg. Who's Greg? Greg is a longtime member of the fandom who's an official writer for the One Piece website as well as a translator for various works, and he even speaks directly with Oda and his team from time to time. It's just surreal seeing someone who was once in our positions as hardcore fans be involved in something like this. That was such an awesome surprise. And from behind him come several blades from a certain character that wasn't revealed in full in this trailer, so we won't discuss it in detail, but this is a pretty menacing scene nonetheless. Then we get the scene of Zoro at the bottom of a well. Now, this isn't a scene from the source material at all, rather this is likely a bit of a dream sequence or a figurative depiction of how Mihawk's line to Zoro affects him about being a frog in a well, conveying to Zoro how far he has to go on his journey to become the world's greatest swordsman. You can see his blue shirt from the cover of Volume 11 here, implying that this could be after Syrup Village, where he last wore the shirt, and next to him was Wado Ichimonji, the only blade he had remaining after his clash with the Mihawk. Zoro notes that the crew has been making enemies all along their journey, and this scene may be taking place at the Baratie, which would make sense with this line given how late into their journey they are. We cut back to Buggy's big top base where we get a blink and you miss it shot of Kabaji, second mate of the Buggy Pirates, riding his unicycle. We also get this close-up shot of Buggy holding his knives like he does in the manga proper, before we get him and his powers in full glory, forcing Nami and Zoro to be back-to-back. As I hinted at in the teaser trailer breakdown, Buggy also has special abilities as he ate the Chop Chop fruit, allowing him to become a splitting human. He can detach his body parts at will, and as such is immune to being cut, sorta like how Luffy's body being rubber gives him some immunity to blunt forces. He strikes with a Chop Chop cannon, confirming that we will be getting named attacks in this series even after the end of the teaser trailer suggested that we may not be. Thank goodness. Though, if I had to nitpick a little bit, this seems more like a Chop Chop festival with all of his body parts spinning around and being used to attack. We cut to the scene from the previous trailer with Garp's ship sending out a cannonball as Usopp warns the crew to hit the deck. Zoro here is rocking the same yellow shirt from the Chapter 28 color spread that I suggested in the last breakdown, and it looks like there's some damage to the mast of the ship as well. There's a quick cut to what seems to be Luffy and Syrup Village fighting against the person with those bladed gloves that we saw earlier in the trailer. That's certain, you know who.
Luffy, they are hunting you.
Guy, save your ass.
What? I saved your ass.
You'll have to excuse them. They're idiots.
This crew, our crew, can handle anything.
I'll do you the kindness of killing you all together.
Back in what looks to be the kitchen of the Going Merry, Nami warns Luffy that he's being hunted. Here she's wearing a shirt patterned similarly to the one she wore in the cover of Volume 11, giving us 4 out of 5 of these outfits so far. Over in the dining area, we have Sanji fighting against Kurobi, a fishman played by Jandra LaRue. Now, there's a ton to unpack here in just this sequence alone. While most people we meet in the first part of the series are human, the world of One Piece is full of various races and of people of different sizes and shapes. One of the most significant races are the fishmen. They are a humanoid race that have the features of various aquatic life. Kurobi is a ray fishman and a practitioner of a specific fighting style, fishman karate, and boy did they get his look down perfectly. He honestly looks so good in this live-action adaptation. They even have the Sun Pirate symbol on his chest right there. Fans of the series will realize that this seems to be a heavy departure from the source material though, as the fishmen are not present at the Baratie, and there seems to be a distinct lack of Don Krieg in this trailer. I think there are some clever changes to the structure of the East Blue Saga going on, and I'll dive into it in full detail a bit later. Now, before Sanji unloads a bevy of kicks, we see a man with a peg leg knocked out over in the background here. This is the aforementioned Red Leg Zeph, played by Craig Fairbass, a pirate who ends up opening the seafaring restaurant, the Baratie, and becomes a mentor to Sanji. When Kurobi stops Sanji's last kick, we can see over his shoulder what appears to be Chu, a smelt whiting fishman who is portrayed by Len Barry Simmons, and over to his right looks to be Matzel, a completely random side character who has no real impact on the source material other than just being present at the Baratie. The attention to detail with this live action is so great and it amazes me sometimes. They have these random characters that don't matter at all, but they just put them in there because they're named. It's great. We cut to Zoro and Sanji arguing over who saved who in what appears to be the aftermath of the Arlong Park battle. Note that Zoro is wearing a shirt very similar to the one he wears in the source material during this arc, which can also be seen on the cover of Volume 9. Zoro and Sanji have a bit of an ongoing rivalry throughout the series, and this could be how the live action adapts the start of it, while in the manga it really begins to flesh out later on in the series during the Little Garden arc. Behind them, if you look closely, you can see Nojiko and Genzo, played by Kamau Umela and Grant Ross. Without getting into too much detail, these are two characters that mean a lot to Nami and her backstory. We then cut to Arlong Park, where the Straw Hats are engaged in battle with various fishmen from Arlong's crew. The setting itself seems to be fairly close to how it was in the source material, though there are some platforms within the pool to allow our protagonists to have a foothold while combating the fishmen who make full use of their advantage in the waters. One fishman leaps out of the water to attack Zoro from behind when Sanji comes flying out from the left of the screen to drop kick him back into the water. Such a great sequence. Behind them, you'll notice these weird carnival games or amusement park stands. This is actually a really cool touch. You see, way later on in the series, we come to find out that Arlong Park was actually inspired by Sabaody Park and Sabaody Archipelago. In the world of One Piece, fishmen are subject to a lot of discrimination from the humans of the world, and as such, Arlong, who we'll see in just a bit, was barred from entering the amusement park on Sabaody as a kid. Though, this idea may not have been conceived yet when Oda was first depicting Arlong Park, and as such, we never got the explicit amusement park attractions in the manga itself. The live action decided to make good on this detail, however, by adding these stands in, such as the Ghost Train and Shark Attack. We cut back to the interior of the Baratie, where Nami seems to be talking to Sanji, explaining that the rest of her crew are idiots. This outfit she's wearing is taken straight from the source material, as it resembles the one she wore during the Baratie arc in the manga, as well as the cover pages of chapter 44 and 49, as well as the color spreads featured in chapter 51 and 61. Sanji responds with a flirtatious smile. We had gotten reports that some of Sanji's overt horniness would be toned down a bit to match the feel of a live-action series, and that he'd come off a bit more flirtatious if anything, and I think this works pretty well here. We then get this scene of the Straw Hats looking over a piece of paper in the kitchen of the Going Merry. Seeing as how they're back in their iconic East Blue outfits, I'd wager that the scene takes place not too long before they head out for the Grand Line to do the big barrel scene that we talked about in the teaser trailer breakdown. And I think this is supported by the fact that the paper they're looking at seems to be Luffy's first bounty poster. You can make out the text reading Marine here at the bottom, as well as the stylized border for where the wanted person's name goes, and you can even sort of see the yellow straw hat in the picture here. Nami looks concerned, while Usopp seems to be hyping up this big momentous event. We come back to the Going Merry being trailed by a Marine ship, but not any Marine. This is the ship that belongs to Garp. In the teaser trailer breakdown, we suggested that there may be some clever footage cutting at play to make it look like the Straw Hats would encounter Garp this early in the series, but it looks like it's actually happening. Could this be after Luffy gets his first bounty, signifying to the Marines that the Straw Hat crew is a real threat? And of note, the Going Merry's sail also seems to be lacking the Jolly Roger here once again. We'll have to see what's up with this. We then get this shot of the Baratier and various ships docked outside. You'll notice that there's a physical dock and a bunch of outside seating. This is a really nice addition to the live action that wasn't necessarily in the source material, as it accounts for the logic of how different ships would stop outside the Baratier and come aboard the restaurant. You can also see that there are some outer fins of the ship that come out and provide a platform, just like in the manga, which would go on to be used for combat as well as other things. Inside the Baratier, we get a scene of our crew dining. Some things of note from this shot. Usopp looks to be sporting a captain's outfit, very reminiscent of the color spread featured in Volume 8 as a coloring page. Luffy's here in the outfit he wore in the Chapter 28 color spread, as previously discussed in our teaser trailer breakdown, but in front of him are some of his favorite foods, a giant piece of meat and a glass of milk. Luffy loves to chow down on meat throughout the series, and his affinity for milk is something that gets made fun of by Shanks in the very first chapter. Luffy dining here could also suggest that he isn't going to be a chore boy on the Baratier like he was in the source material, as he was forced to work there for a little bit after accidentally sending a cannonball into the seafaring restaurant. We get the shot of the crew walking out of a tangerine field. This is likely Kokoyashi Village, the town where Nami grew up. Sanji still has his bag with him, suggesting that he hasn't been able to drop it off on the Going Merry just yet. We cut to Nami sitting beside a grave that reads Belmare. Belmare was a tangerine farmer and Nami's adopted mother, as we've seen in the manga, and passed away due to some unfortunate circumstances that I won't get into. It'll be interesting to see if they maintain this tragic backstory for Nami in the live action. Note that Nami here is wearing an outfit inspired by her outfit in Chapter 107's color spread. As noted in the previous breakdown, Luffy is also seen in the series wearing an outfit similar to that one in that color spread as well. We then get our first shot of Arlong, a saw shark fishman, portrayed by McKinley Belcher III, and we see him force Luffy out of the front doors of the Baratier, and then later threaten to kill the Straw Hats. Now if you look closely, this first shot of Arlong actually takes place in the circus town that we met Buggy the Clown in, and you can tell by this huge figure of a clown head in the back in both scenes, right here next to Kurobe. This brings us to a larger discussion of the restructuring of the East Blue Saga that I alluded to earlier in this video. In the source material, Arlong doesn't know who the Straw Hats are up until the arc that he's introduced in, the Arlong Park arc. Whereas here in the live action, it feels like Arlong will be chasing down Luffy and the Straw Hats across the East Blue, or at least from Orange Town with Buggy through the Baratier and into the Arlong Park arc where the show is likely to have its finale. Of course, this is a big departure from the source material, but I think this works well to serve as a seasonal story as it makes for a more cohesive through line across the 8 episodes. It's also important to realize that Oda was involved in these changes, and it makes a lot of sense for him to want this overarching plot to be more explicit in this story. Without getting into the details and spoiling any new potential fans, let me remind the older fans of the series that Arlong was technically set up and that the crew was on a crash course with him from a fairly early on point in the series, and it just wasn't that explicit until the Baratier arc. Oda didn't really have these explicit overarching through lines in his structuring of story sagas until we got to the Baroque Work saga, so going back to make it more explicit in the East Blue works very well to service the story in my opinion. Honestly, he may have even had it in his mind back then, but due to the turbulent nature of being published in Weekly Shonen Jump as a fledgling series, it may have been difficult for him to devote time to build up such a long-term plot point in the early chapters when there's a chance your manga could get discontinued at any point. All in all, I think this is a pretty solid change, but my one concern is the distinct lack of Don Krieg in this trailer. It had been reported that Milton Shore would portray him in this series, but if the Arlong pirates occupy the combat during the Baratier arc, then does this mean that Krieg is out of the series? Well, the Straw Hat Grand Fleet website did feature a bounty post for Milton Shore's Don Krieg, so maybe he's still part of the story, but in a role that's a bit more abbreviated. I would understand this change as well. The Don Krieg battle kinda takes a long time relative to the rest of the fights in the East Blue Saga, and there's a lot of gimmicks and stage-related combat that would be a resource-intensive scene to adapt for the live action.
You're my captain from now until the end.
I'm gonna kick your ass, because no one messes with my friends.
What's so special about you?
I'm Monkey D. Luffy. And I'm gonna be king of the pirates.
cut back to a scene of the OG trio standing in the center of the Shellstown Marine Base courtyard, potentially staring down Captain Morgan. Zoro vows his loyalty to Luffy, and this is likely an adaptation of his iconic "I will never lose again" speech in the Baratie arc. We get this quick shot of Arlong with his huge sword, the Shark Saw. Really cool that they adapted this beast of a weapon from the source material. A bit of a spoiler here as we see Arlong Park crumbling and Nami walking through some rubble, though this likely isn't Arlong Park that she's walking through, as her clothes are that of her iconic East Blue outfit. She's wearing this during the Orangetown arc with Buggy's circus tent, so this may be an adaptation of Buggy's very special weapon. We also get probably one of the most iconic scenes from the East Blue, with Luffy putting his straw hat atop of Nami's head. Now, admittedly, this is a bit of a spoiler, but I imagine there will still be a great impact within the context of the rest of the episode, so don't worry. And there was also a report that Oda suggested that this scene was able to convey exactly what it needed to, so I wouldn't worry too much. Nami here is wearing the outfit she wears for most of the Arlong Park arc in the source material. We then cut to the interior of Arlong Park, which looks to be the mat room that's been recreated as more of a stage or arena for the purposes of this live-action series. Luffy punches a stone column, and I wonder if this is part of the sequence of Arlong Park being destroyed, or potentially an adaptation of this scene from the manga where Luffy proves that you don't need strong teeth to crush stone. We get another montage of some quick scenes, one of which is a strange shot of Shanks doing a finger pistol, not that finger pistol, presumably at a young Luffy. In the source material, Luffy claimed that his punch was as strong as a pistol from his youth, but maybe in the live action he gets the idea to call his punch the Gum Gum pistol from Shanks after this? I'm not sure. Zoro, Nami, and Luffy have a really cool fight sequence against the Marines in Shellstown, where we then cut to Dracul Mihawk with his giant black blade, Yoru. Hawkeye's Mihawk is portrayed by Stephen John Ward, and it looks like they even gave him the rings in his eyes as well as the sharp facial hair. It's pretty great. We cut to him and Zoro having their battle at the Baratie, just like in the manga. And we cut to a scene shown from the previous trailer with young Luffy and Shanks on a boat attacked by the Lord of the Coast, though this time it's extended and we see it come in for a bite. Back at Arlong Park, Sanji delivers some more kicks to the various Fishman pirates, and I should say, his choreography is surprisingly great in this series. Luffy delivers a Gum Gum Gatling at Arlong, which I don't think actually happened in the manga, at least at the point that they're in, if at all, so there's definitely been a few liberties taken with this fight. But we do get Arlong asking what's so special about Luffy. This is likely a nod to the classic line from Luffy where Arlong mocks Luffy for his inabilities and how he has to rely on other people to survive on the sea, to which Luffy gleefully replies, "I can beat you." We have another iconic scene of Shanks giving the straw hat to a young Luffy, portrayed by Colton Osorio. They've kept Luffy's exact outfit from the manga with the anchor shirt and notice that Shanks' overcoat actually looks to be more of a cape, much like how Garp's jacket may also be a cape. This change seems to be largely for practical purposes, as real people don't have magic broad shoulders like they do in the cartoons. And the way this trailer is cut, it's almost as if in response to Arlong's question of what makes Luffy special, Luffy stretches out his cheek to show his rubber powers, just as he does in the source material throughout the series. And I love the VFX on the amount of light coming through the extended skin. It's a nice attention to detail that makes this feel a little bit more real, and there is a certain body horror component inherent to Luffy's abilities, really to any stretching abilities from any comic or medium at all. But it's important to remember many of the people Luffy meet across the East Blue are rightfully shocked and horrified by his stretching, so the creepy aspect of this power in live action makes more sense to some degree. We get a brief shot of Axe-Hand Morgan, the Marine captain who rules Shellstown with an iron fist, or iron axe. Luffy generates some momentum for a Gum Gum Whip, which is adapted straight from the manga itself, even with Zoro ducking down like that. But it's really cool to see some sort of the physics being accounted for, with all that spinning for momentum, as in the manga, cartoon physics are often applied. We have this bird's eye view of Arlong Park being destroyed by Luffy's Gum Gum axe, which is another scene taken directly from the manga, as we cut to Luffy atop the Going Merry cheering. Note that we finally see the Straw Hat Jolly Roger on the sail now, making me think that this is being overlaid in post-production as opposed to having it printed directly on the sail itself. The trailer begins to wrap as this full Straw Hat crew walk into Arlong Park. This is an adaptation of the March on Arlong Park, popularized by the anime. In the manga, we only see the beginning of this as the crew begins to leave to combat the Arlong pirates, so it seems the live action may be taking this popular sequence from the anime itself. Also of note, Nami is now included in this, whereas in the manga and the anime she's left out. This may be the result of the restructuring of the story and changing the Arlong plotline, or maybe they just wanted to include her here to show the unity of the crew coming together at once. Either way, I think it works very well, and eagle-eyed fans will notice her arm is bandaged up, suggesting a certain special scene does take place in its entirety in this live-action adaptation. We then cut to black, and Luffy declares that he's going to become the king of the pirates, as we get the official logo to close out the trailer.
I didn't know there were so many pirates. It's terrible. I know, right? Where's my face?
But of course, We have one more scene, and it's chock full of Easter eggs and references, mostly for parts of the story that this series will not cover. So if you don't want to be explicitly spoiled about future characters and events and want to experience the manga how it was intended, then feel free to click out of this video or skip ahead to the end. I appreciate you watching this far. Now there's a lot to unpack here, so let's just dive right in. We see Kobe and Luffy in Shell's Town looking at a bounty board at a bunch of wanted posters and warnings for civilians. Kobe hates the idea of all these pirates, while Luffy is looking to see if he has a bounty yet, despite having just started out on his journey. You'll notice there's a ton of anti-pirate propaganda on here. Things like pirates spreading disease or how talking carelessly can help out the enemy. A whole lot of fear-mongering going on here, with this poster suggesting anyone can be a criminal. And there's even this victim of piracy support group that meets on the 10th and A Street at 7:30 p.m. on Mondays. I wasn't sure if this is a reference to the manga coming out every Monday in Japan. Maybe. Either way, the disdain for pirates is strong in Shell's Town, likely a byproduct of Axe-Hand Morgan's tyrannical rule over the town. But let's talk about what we're all waiting for, the bounty posters. I jumped out of my chair when I saw these. First and foremost, we have a bounty for Alvida, coming in at 5 million berries, berries being the standardized currency used throughout most of the world of One Piece. Notice the same pose in the picture here as her bounties portrayed in Movie 9. Most of these bounty posters are as faithful as possible to how they've been depicted across various One Piece media, and that's just awesome. We then have this wanted poster for Cavendish. Cavendish is the captain of the Beautiful Pirates and doesn't appear until way later on into the story during the Dressrosa arc. He started his pirate journey a year before Luffy did, but would later on get overshadowed by Luffy's generation, causing him to hold a grudge against them. Now this is such a cool Easter egg to include a character that has a very specific relationship to Luffy. It is a bit odd to include the wanted posters of people from the Grand Line in a small, practically remote East Blue town, but hey, why not? It just goes to show how much love the people who made this live action have for the source material. To the right of this poster, there's another bounty poster that's a bit harder to make out, as the picture is obscured and the name is off screen. Maybe we'll be able to get a better look at this in the actual episode. To the right of that though, there's a poster for a character who we'll talk about in just a second, as they have another poster on the other side of the camera. If we look all the way to the left, you can briefly make out a wanted poster for someone whose name ends with O-N-G. Now, this may be a bounty poster for Arlong, who we saw earlier in the trailer, as there aren't too many pirates whose name ends with that string of letters. And when the camera moves to the left, we can make out some more of this poster, and it sort of resembles him with his head facing toward the left, and what could be his sawtooth nose peeking out right here. If this is Arlong, this is a really cool way to secretly introduce this character toward the very start of the series, and works well to service that whole overarching through line that he seems to be involved in. Now that character I spoke about before, who I said had another poster here, is Foxy the Silver Fox. Foxy is a pirate who doesn't show up until the Long Ring Longland arc, and challenges the Straw Hats to a series of games known as the Davy Back Fight. He's a really underutilized character, but a fan favorite nonetheless, and this is just really cool to see him here. And finally, we have this bounty poster for Bellamy the Hyena, who shows up later on during the Jaya arc and ends up becoming an antagonistic rival of sorts for Luffy. This is a really nice thematic addition here, as Bellamy didn't believe Luffy's bounty when he first learned of it, whereas here, Luffy is eager to see his own bounty despite him not actually having one yet. And that's about it for the breakdown. There were so many cool little things to talk about. The care that the creators of this show put into this project feels really tangible. And like I said in the previous breakdown, no matter how you feel about the direction or look of this project, the important thing to keep in mind is that the purpose of this show is to spread the word of the series we all know and love, One Piece. Oda gave us an official update on the live action and reminded us what really matters, and that's the joy that One Piece brings to so many people and will hopefully continue to bring to a ton of new ones. That said, thank you all for watching. I really appreciate the support on the previous teaser trailer breakdown and all the support for the channel itself. If you like this breakdown and want to see more of these kinds of videos for when the live action drops on August 31st, then please subscribe so you can get these as soon as they come out. And if you read the manga week to week, we do breakdowns for those as well. Chapter 1088 is right around the corner. If there's anything you think I missed, please let me know in the comments. And like I said, there was a ton of stuff packed into this trailer, so I probably missed something. Thanks for all the support, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.